So good to have you join us on the program. Now, the Northern Senators Forum is calling for calm following reactions trailing the planned relocation of some departments of the Central Bank of Nigeria to Lagos at the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAAN. The forum says an opportunity for dialogue and negotiation on the issue with President Bola Tinubu will happen, and they have expressed readiness to engage the president. In a statement by the spokesman of the forum, Senator Sulaiman Kawu Sumaila, legal measures will be sought if negotiation fails. That's what he said. It assures that the forum will take action in line with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended, stressing that no one should be apprehensive over the relocation of the critical agencies of government. Now, the Arewa Consultative Forum had kicked against the planned relocation, describing the move as a deliberate plot against the interests of the northern region. They say recent government policies make it look like there's a plan to shift the seat of power to Lagos, which used to be the former federal capital of Nigeria. Well, for more on this, I'm glad to have in studio Bashir Dalhatu, who's the chairman, board of trustees of the Arewa Consultative Forum, ACF. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, life bencher, and former chairman of the body of benchers. He was a former minister in 3 ministries: transport and aviation, power and steel, and interior in the governments of Chief Ernest Shonekan, General Sani Abacha, and General Abdulsalami Abubakar. So glad to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
And I also want to add that you the Wazirin Dusi.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Yeah, much more revered traditional title. All right, talk to us about the ACF's problems and with the Tinubu administration on these issues, which has made a lot of people within this apex organization in the north to actually voice their concerns, including the ACF pushing out a statement that the Tinubu government should have a rethink over the policies.
Thank you very much. Well, to understand the position of the Arewa Consultative Forum and I believe majority of northerners now, is to first of all go into a little bit of history so that people will now be able to understand why Arewa is feeling a bit apprehensive. Anybody my age and above will remember how prosperous this country was, and especially the northern region, based on the agricultural output and activity of the majority of our population. Then there was the discovery of oil, and then everybody forgot about agriculture, and the rush into oil had caused a very serious deficit in the performance of agriculture and food production, and therefore making the economy work in various directions. That rush has left. Obviously, when there are less activities in agri sector, means that there will be less economy and economic activity and money and prosperity in those areas that depend entirely on agriculture, which is northern Nigeria. Now, with that also come along the other government programs, projects, some of them deliberate, some of them, I think, innocent, lack of foresight, that further made northern Nigeria far more apprehensive and began to feel that something must have been amiss. We have been brought up, my generation and those before me, to believe in the oneness of Nigeria, to work, to protect, to promote the oneness of this country, to unify it, to be united, and to love our neighbors. So, but when programs like the current one you are talking about,
the planned relocation of
the planned relocation is just the tip of the iceberg, really. It started much earlier than that. We were here when in 1999 part of the Port Authority, Nigerian Port Authority, was removed from Abuja back to Lagos. Nigerian International Institute of International Affairs, and I think maybe NIMASA were returned to Lagos. And we thought it was really not a very, very well-intentioned thing to do at that time. Now that will quickly, we recall other government actions that had put us backwards, like the privatization of industries in Nigeria.
Government-owned enterprises.
Yes, government-owned enterprises were privatized, and this was after the petroleum discovery and the rush and the businesses that took place. Naturally, those in the proximity of the source of wealth were getting it easier than those that are far away from it. So they were able to buy off all the government hitherto jointly owned natural wealth of the country were sold, and we believe over 80% of those went to the south. Our view at that time was that if you are selling a jointly owned government or industries or enterprises, you should sell them to the states.
To state governments.
To state governments who will now hold in trust to individuals, so that you can sell to individuals in states, and where the states cannot be able to sell all, will keep in trust. So all that in the end, the ownership is still going to be, well, the enterprises will still be privatized, but the ownership will still be Nigerian. Unfortunately, that didn't happen that way. So that one also pushed the North backwards in terms of resources, in terms of economic activity.
Yeah, but some of these enterprises were also bought by Northerners.
Yes.
I mean, a whole lot of Northerners. And you and I will quite agree that Lagos is the financial capital of Nigeria. So if the CBN is actually moving some departments to Lagos to, according to it, allow for effectiveness and functionality, why should the ACI be kicking against that? And moreover, some others are also saying that the airports, the federal airports of Nigeria, will function much more better in Lagos than in Abuja. As you had mentioned previously, NPA was moved from Abuja to Lagos because the ports are in Lagos. And then you have NIIA, which, I mean, the foundation was in Lagos, but eventually it was taken there. So isn't the ACF considering the reality on ground and then, of course, the decisions of government?
If you talk about transferring FAAN to Lagos because there are more airline activities in Lagos than in Abuja, then you should take the Ministry of Commerce to Onitsha or Kano, because there is far more commercial activities in Onitsha and Kano than in Abuja. You should take the Ministry of Education or Agriculture to Makati, where there is a lot of agricultural activity and food production. You can distribute these ministries to locations according to the kind of activity you can identify. But that is not the intention or the reason or the purpose of establishing a federal capital territory. It's supposed to be in itself a symbol of unity, a symbol of togetherness of this country. The moment you start dismembering ministries back to Lagos, first you are establishing a precedence, which means next government it comes on and it doesn't happen to come from the south, will now return them or transfer others from Lagos back to Abuja, and it will
or maybe Kaduna also.
Or Kaduna or Sokoto or Calabar or things like that. So the intention really is to make institutions symbolic of our unity, symbolic of the purpose of this country, and not to give reasons. If you say congestion, when you mention congestion in relation to cities, anybody you talk about congestion will first think of Lagos before he thinks.
But well, the CBN is saying that it's building, the CBN headquarters here is supposed to actually house 3,000 employees, but it has over 4,000. And the CBN spends money sending its own staff to go to Lagos to spend 2 months, 3 months to do certain jobs, which normally should have been domiciled in Lagos, and that they're spending so much. So for effectiveness, the CBN is saying that it wants to decongest its headquarters. And people are wondering, why is the ACF or why are northerners or northern leaders or elites actually having a problem with that?
First of all, the CBN building and the staff must have been in Abuja for nearly 30 years now. Yes. And we never heard about this until suddenly it came up. That's one. Two, we know that in Lagos, the banking supervision department is very strong. In Lagos already, it never moved to Abuja, so it could still do its function there. Three, at the age of technology now, you can work for a Chinese company in China while you sit here in Abuja and still perform your function. For CBN to say that it does not have that kind of upgrade in its own operations, so we think it's not true.
And some other southern groups are also hitting back at northern elites like you. And they said, look, if we look at the military architecture of the country, the northern part of the country, specifically Kaduna State, houses the headquarters of several military institutions, right from the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, you go to Nigeria Army Depot, you go to 1 Division, you go to the Air Force, and so many. That if that's the case, then the North doesn't have the wherewithal to actually speak on this, because there's a huge concentration of the military and its armament in the northern part of the country.
If you ask me, I would say maybe it is due to Kaduna centrality on this in Nigeria. If we have got a Papa port, we have Tinkan ports, we have other ports in Lagos, but that's because that's the natural area where they should be. There is a reason for that. And therefore, there are reasons for this congregation of military establishments in Kaduna. I think that's because Kaduna occupies a central portion of this country, and military operations will be far easier to spread, to reach out to all parts of Nigeria from Kaduna than if they were in Lagos to reach Sokoto or Maiduguri, or if they are in Calabar to reach these distant places. So everything has a reason. I remember when this country actually had a concerted policy that if you place an industry in the south, you will try and place it in the north. If you remember the steel complexes, the airports, the hospitals, the
motor vehicle plants and all of
plants,
that.
yes.
Yeah, in the 70s.
They were actually, these are government well thought out policies in order to distribute resources to allow Nigerians access to prosperity. But they have been long abandoned and not pursued.
And you've made me to actually remember what General Murtala Mohammed had said while he was instituting the Federal Capital Territory, which is Abuja and FCT. He has said in his maiden broadcast on the establishment of the Federal Capital Territory that Lagos will specifically serve as the economic capital of Nigeria, and that Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and Enugu will be developed alongside Lagos and Abuja to ensure that it deflects the powers within the country and not to allow the FCT to become a replica of Lagos, which they were running from, and for Lagos not to be left out because, of course, it's the economic capital. Now, the North has been in power for several years, and people are wondering why Northerners are not seeing this from a national perspective. They say that this point you're bringing against President Tinubu is from a narrow, centered perspective. How do you reply to such critics?
When I started talking, I said there were so many reasons why we feel the way we do feel this. Let me remind you, some years back, there was the issue of recapitalization of banks. Suddenly also it came up. And the North had 9 healthy, quite average-sized banks, but they were healthy. But the recapitalization wiped them out.
That was the former CBN Governor Charles
Soludo's project. Okay. Wiped them out, and we ended up with not a single bank in the north. Well, and we know what a bank is.
The Bank of the North became the Unity Bank.
Yes.
And of course, majority of the shares were owned by Northerners and all of that, and then a few banks here and there.
Not anymore. I don't think now if you check it, you will find that.
Yeah, but these are economic decisions. And you have Northerners, wealthy Northerners. Banks are private-owned institutions. No, so why are the Northerners not opening more banks?
This was a government policy.
Yeah, for 25 billion naira as per capitalization.
Yes,
and of course, they are rich Northerners. How come the Northerners
didn't take into consideration that if you put that kind of policy, a whole sector of this country will be deprived of the banking system. But that's not even the problem. After that, after we lost 9 banks, then the central bank continued to prop up other banks that it has saved with the jointly owned resources of this country. So we lost our banks. The banks that remained were propped up with our own money, and we keep all the money in these banks. You try and go to get a loan from any of these banks and see how difficult it is. Meanwhile, all our money is in these banks. And okay, they put 1 or 2 Northerners, some on the board for window dressing. But it is a fact that we are deprived even to reach sources of loan in order to pursue legitimate
and when you say we are deprived, who is depriving you? Because I mean, since 1999, okay, if Obasanjo deprived you through that policy, through the former CBN governor, Charles Soludo, how about when Yar'Adua became president? I mean, he's a Northerner from Katsina State, and after that we'll have former President Muhammadu Buhari, a Northerner from Katsina State too. If you had those years, and of course that's cumulatively like about 10 years, how come you didn't design some programs to actually protect Northern interests? And how come the ACF is also being accused of propping up some of these issues only when it loses power, when the North is not in power, when it's a Southerner that is in government like Tinubu?
We don't view this as loss of power. A Northerner was in power in the last 8 years, but I don't think the North was in power. A Northerner was on the top of the government.
That's a highly political statement.
Yes, well, yes, but that you cannot say we are in power. North was not in power. I come from a village in Jigawa State, and in the last 20 years, very little has changed. Whatever changed was because of the effort of the state government, not the federal government. You can tell so many other towns in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria, that had not changed in any way, that had not experienced any federal patronage because the Northerner was in government. We are brought up to see Nigeria as one entity, and not to discriminate against other sections of the country. That's why probably you will see a Northerner as president, and he was more concerned in doing the second Niger bridge, while there is a Kano Maiduguri road that has been there for 30 years and is still uncompleted. While there is a Kaduna.
Isn't it right for him to do that? Because the vast majority of the resources of this country come from oil, and which is in the southern part of the country. And you and I know that, of course, they also deserve some attention.
You are making my point. I'm saying that as president, he didn't see that as part of outside northern Nigeria.
So he was more nationalistic.
Exactly, and that's our own upbringing, all of us.
So are you saying that the southern presidents like President Tinubu are not very nationalistic like
I don't
northern
think,
presidents?
I don't think this move had the President Tinubu's approval.
You think it's the hawks around him?
I think some government officials always believe that to keep their jobs, they need to please their bosses, right or wrongly. And then they embark on adventures like this transfer of sections of their establishments back to Lagos, thinking that the president would be happy because he came from Lagos. And I don't believe I don't believe that he deliberately will say, look, remove this thing, take them to Lagos. North do not, I don't think we believe that, first of all. Secondly, the North had voted him massively, so the least that they would expect is some kind of political dividend of democracy, not reduction in their opportunity, and not reduction in their prosperity, not reduction in their...
Yeah, but well, as a former Minister of Aviation yourself, you and I know that when it comes to airline traffic into Nigeria, it's usually more in Lagos, which happens to be in southern Nigeria, and is the former federal capital. But let me just take you back to a very critical talk here and there, that this is just the views of some northern elites. I mean, just a few of you here and there, that what the average northerner is interested in is curbing the issues of insecurity, the heightening issues of kidnapping, insurgency, and all of that. That this is just an elite consensus at the top, while the vast majority of northerners actually need the issues of insecurity tackled by President Tinubu.
No, the insecurity issue had been going on for over 10 years, and it has not improved. We have not, I personally believe that we may have lost all sorts of opportunities to take care of it at the right time, but we didn't. And we seem to be actually giving up hope, because there doesn't seem to be any improvement. In fact, it's worsening. People in Abuja were just thinking or talking or hearing about insecurity in Maiduguri, in Katsina, in Sokoto, in Kaduna. But now, the thing has crept up to Abuja, and they are encircling this town. So there is palpable feeling here that the insecurity has come. Only God knows how far it will go if nothing different.
Yeah, and they said the ACF and elites like you are not talking so much about insecurity, but when it comes to economic interests, where your interests are touched, you quickly come out and you talk about political issues.
Well, I'm not in aviation business. None of us is. I don't think we are, by our constitution in the ACF, we are supposed to look after the interest and protect it and promote it, our people, in a way that will not affect the unity of this country. So that while we still feel for our people, we still feel for other Nigerians. And when it is deprivation, if you deprive a Jigawa person, to us, it's as bad as depriving a Calabar man. So this, we are still in our head, we have not yet separated the fact that although we are northerners, but we are Nigerians. And when things that affect North that will probably affect Nigeria or our thinking, then we react. It's nothing to do with the elites. Ordinary man in the street in the North is aware of this. And today, communication has grown so vast that what you are doing, you and I now here, is seen all over the world. So the smallest man on the street has got a telephone that he sees, that he hears, that he listens to radios. So he knows it. And he knows that he has voted this government into power so that he could have some kind of relief.
Yeah, and one of your own.
And security.
Bashir Dalhatu, one of your own is the Vice President of this country, Kashim Shettima, former governor of Borno State, former two-term governor. Haven't you had access to him to actually speak with him and say, look, this government is not going in the direction that we like, or some of the policies ongoing, we don't really like it? Wouldn't he feel a little bit taken aback that you're coming to the open without having heard his own view and maybe what he's doing within the government? And how soon do you also plan to see President Tinubu on these issues if he grants you an audience?
Okay, let me say that as leadership, we have just come into office recently. In person, I know the Vice President quite well. I know the President well. And I am sure that it will not be a problem for me to talk to either of them. As I talk to you now, I have signed a letter requesting for an audience with the president so that the leadership of ACF can have the opportunity to sit and discuss these issues with him. But until now, there have been so many press releases, press conferences, and people voicing their opinion, and this has covered the whole of the North.
Yeah, and including religious group, because just last week the Sharia Council of Nigeria, they shouted, and they were called upon just a few days, and I saw them with the president, and he was trying to extract some commitment from them after informing them of some of his policies. Well, we do hope that the president will be reaching out to you. As we try to round off this conversation, talk to me about the northern idea of Nigeria's unity, because there's a huge outcry for restructuring in the country right now. Do you think that whatever you've been talking about is a subtle kind of restructuring by President Tinubu that is being done under the table? Or what's your view about the new call for restructuring under President Tinubu?
Well, I have given you a background of how a normal northerner thinks. He thinks Nigeria first, unity, strength, oneness of purpose. He thinks also north, but Nigeria. So for us, it is because of this deep-seated belief in this country that made some people begin to think that the North or Northerners are afraid of restructuring. And that is complete misunderstanding of our situation. But of course, they were also dealing with our predecessors that are much older than us, that are closer to them. I'm talking now about socio-cultural organizations in this country. The leadership in the North has shifted to a new generation like us that are less patient, that are in a hurry to see progress all over. We want to see peace and security, but we are also not afraid to discuss any issue. And therefore,
including issues of state creation, including issues of state police, including issues of fiscal federalism,
including
and all these issues mentioned, including by President Tinubu while he was in the opposition. So but you're not afraid of all these issues?
No. If you talk about restructuring, depending on who you're talking with, you talk to people of someone from South, he wants own and manage his own resource. If you talk to the Southwest, they want to federalism, they want to own all the VAT that they collect. If you talk to the Southeast, they want another state created, even though actually they neither have the space or the population to have that. But if you talk to us now, what we want to do is to use what we have to get what we are looking for.
And what do you have that you're using to get what you're looking for?
We have over 70% of the land mass of Nigeria. We have over 60% of the population. So we are going to use our land mass and our population and our natural resources, especially soil and minerals, to sit and talk about restructuring. The North should no longer be viewed as running away from restructuring. We are ready and able and willing to commence discussions on these issues.
You're a lawyer, former chairman of the body of benchers. There are calls for a new constitution. Would you not be willing to sit with other parts of the country to firm up a new constitution that works for everyone, if there's a sovereign national conference or national constitutional conference or whatever it is called?
The main objection that I have been hearing in the news, including from lawyers, is that this constitution that we are operating was not people's constitution, that it was actually a military constitution. But forgetting that actually, although the military had to put a decree to produce it, it is actually Nigerian people from different local governments that were elected by elected local governments to meet in Lagos, including myself, in 1978.
Oh, you were part of the Constituent Assembly?
Yes. Oh, and they fashioned out the 1979 Constitution. And that is, people who criticize it as military do not understand that it is not true, because we are moving from military to civilian, you need a military law to bring a civilian-made constitution into effect. And that's what has happened.
Yeah, so, but a few things were added by the then General Abdulsalami Abubakar administration, which you were part of as a minister. What actually happened? What were the few insertions added to the 1979 Constitution, which became the 1999 Constitution?
Before there was a 1999 Constitution, which was just the basic foundation of work was the 1979 Constitution till today. That's what is being used. Of course, it was tinkered here and there, and the military, when they get reports, even the 1989 Constitution,
which was never adopted,
was created by, in fact, was created by civilians. I was there at that one too. So, but it is semantic. When you say some people want to even change it completely to parliamentary system. If you talk to me about that, then we can discuss whether presidential or parliamentary. But if they are supporting presidential, they can only take the 1999 now as amended and tinker with it and change it. But we have been talking about constitution reform.
All right.
But the message here is clear. That
very, very quickly as we try to round up.
Yes, our message is clear. We are Nigerians, we love Nigeria. We want a united country, peaceful and secure. But we also want to be treated as equal Nigerians with opportunities equal to everybody, not more than anybody else, but equal to everybody. We want justice and fairness to be the main war cry in the administration of President Bola Tinubu.
All right, we must thank you so much. Bashir Dalhatu is the senior advocate of Nigeria, a former three-term minister, former chairman board of trustees, chairman board of trustees of the Arewa Consultative Forum, and former chairman of the board of benchers. And of course, you're a life bencher yourself. We must thank you so much. There are so many things that you've become in this country, but I think the most exciting one for me is that you were part of the 1978 Constituent Assembly, which drafted the 1979 Constitution, which was replicated in 1999, and it's currently in operation. We must thank you immensely for taking out your time to actually enlighten our viewers on the views from the North, and we hope that President Tinubu and his team too will appreciate your succinct views here. Thank you so much.